Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
I'm chilling, bro. NBA playoff first round has been super exciting. It has set the bar pretty high for these playoffs in totality. And a couple of the series are already wrapped up, but a couple of the series that are still hanging on by a thread have a real chance to go the distance if a couple of superstars step up. By the time that you guys are seeing this episode, hopefully we'll see some game sevens. But nonetheless, TV, round one has not disappointed.
It has not disappointed. I mean, we talked about this before the episode. It hasn't disappointed when it comes to close games. We have some close series. I know we have some kind of duds here and there, but those were expected. Like, we got basically all the great aspects of NBA basketball, which was absolutely fantastic from this first round. And we're going to be talking a lot about it in this episode. But Jay, before we get to playoff basketball, because we have a lot to get into, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J / Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily made content. That's where you get the news, you got the series, the game recaps, you got the clips from the podcast. All that stuff can be found on the TikTok and Instagram, as well as the YouTube short, so check that out. In terms of the YouTube, going to there now, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, bro, 8 series, and although, like I said, we got a couple of duds in there, there's a few heaters in here we must address.
100%. And just to kind of shake things up like we did last game, obviously we talked about our first round thoughts, we broke down the series. Today we're going to be doing it kind of in a different way. We're going to be doing it in a fill-in-the-blank sort of way. So I'm going to give Jay a prompt, and then we're both going to answer it and try and fill in the blanks on how we think each of these sentences should be completed. Jay, you ready to get into it?
Yeah, bro, this is a different play on it. So you guys fill in the blanks at home as we go through these episodes. Through this episode, it should be a pretty unique take on trying to get a better beat on these series as they start to wrap up.
100%. And Jay, we got to go to the most entertaining series for us, the Nuggets Clippers. And I'm going to need you to fill in the blank for me here. The Nuggets Clippers has been a blank out of 10 series.
I'm going to say that it's been I'm going to put it at a 9. I'm going to put it at a strong 9. I can't give it the 10 yet. I'll explain that a little bit after I give your answer. But I'm going to give the Nuggets Clippers series a 9 out of 10. We've seen an historic buzzer beater. We've seen an overtime game 1, triple-double for Nikola Jokic, and I think 2 of the 4 games so far, or nearly. A resurgence of James Harden, the redemption factor of Kawhi Leonard. We've seen everything. I think the one thing that has been throwing me off with the Nuggets in particular being the ones is, who is that guy that's coming along the road with Jokic? It feels like it's Aaron Gordon this go around, but I'm so used to seeing the dynamic play of Jamal Murray kind of help uplift this Nuggets team, and it's just been a part of the series that when we came into the series, when we did the preview, I remember his name came up a handful of times as the Robin to Jokic's Batman, that we thought if those two guys, 2-man game comes out and kills, they're going to give the Clippers a run for their money. And we just haven't felt that imprint on the game from Jamal through this series. And so it's taken away one of the elements I was looking forward to the most. Now, don't get me wrong. The Nuggets are getting it from other areas. I mentioned Aaron Gordon earlier. Russell Westbrook has been touch and go throughout the series, but his effort has been very, very much identified from, especially in the game 1 overtime, which we touched on in that overtime play where it was him and Aaron Gordon getting multiple offensive rebounds to keep that game alive. And I believe in game 4, he was relatively solid as well. Yeah. So he's had an imprint on the series. It's really just the Jamal Murray factor to me. And maybe that's not fair enough to take a whole point away from them. But it was just my personal expectations coming to the series. But man, Nuggets Clippers, without fail, has given us literally a touch of anything and everything you could want or hope for out of a series in the first round of all places too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I have to agree with you there. I also gave this series a 9 out of 10 in terms of just pure basketball. Because when you look at the other series, we're going to talk about some of the off-the-court stuff. We're going to talk about some of the extracurriculars that happen on the basketball court. But in terms of in-game adjustments, in terms of actual play on the basketball court, this has been the best series in the playoffs. Because you have the Nuggets, obviously with Nikola Jokic, the best player in the league, and just trying to find a second guy. You mentioned Jamal Murray. That was one of the things I had to write down too, because it's not like Jamal Murray has been bad per se,
Yeah.
But he feels like this is like a regular season Jamal Murray. And like the last couple of years, we have been so accustomed to seeing playoff Jamal Murray. We're always like, oh, he might be okay in the regular season. He might be a borderline all-star. When it comes to the playoffs, he's going to be a top 10 player. I don't think we see that just yet. I think he's been good, but he hasn't been. But we haven't seen the great version of Jamal Murray. And if that comes out in the like at the end of the series, then that's gonna like maybe tilt the series in the Nuggets' favor over the Clippers. But like, yeah, you mentioned that too. James Harden, awesome series. Vika Zubac has been great for the time that he's been on the floor. Kawhi Leonard, we've seen him have great performances as well. If you want to see star power, if you want to see just crazy plays and like crazy close games, this is the series for you, man. Besides the game 3, every single game has just been much watch TV, and I cannot wait. And I really hope this series goes 7.
Yeah, this is one of those series that I feel like coming in, we had a certain anticipation that Nikola Jokic, being the player that he was just going to be able to imprint himself on the series enough to keep the Nuggets in it. And so far, so good for what it's worth. He has done his job. The biggest thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is just who are the passengers in the boat with Jokic in terms of bringing this thing along. The Clippers have been able to play so physically because of the fact that Ivica Zubac has also offensively returned the favor. I think that's another thing that's been underratedly, like under-discussed, actually, within this series. Everybody talks about the play of Kawhi Leonard and how he's been so good so far this season. So far this postseason and everything. And power to him because he has been a big-time performer through these first couple of games. But Ivica Zubac's ability to give it back on offense has been huge for the Clippers, especially TV, because your boy Stormin Norman has not been the guy we saw in the regular season for majority of this series so far. He's been very quiet, had a couple of double-digit performances here and there, but has been a guy who is not necessarily like raised hell, especially from a three-point shooting aspect, which was kind of one of his calling cards this year, was being able to pull up with his pull-up jumper from beyond the arc, was butter most of the season.
It was.
During the playoffs, it's been a lot quieter for him. So Ivica Zubac being able to pick up the slack as an interior paint touch, it's given them something else that I'm not going to say they haven't had all season because Ivica's been solid all year. But this is like, you can tell that he was asked like, yo, we're going to need you to take it up a notch. We're going to need you to force Jokic to guard. We're going to need you to make it clear that he's going to have to play both sides of the floor if they want to come back and if they want to have any chance of winning the series. Ivica has taken it more than advantage, and I think game 1 was like the perfect precedent for it. Then he finished with like 26 and 15 or something crazy like that.
Yo, like, he's had an
hooping.
Yeah, he's been hooping.
Shout out to Ivica Zubac, man. He's been like sleeper best players of the first round. Not gonna be. Wouldn't crack my top 5 if we were making like an All NBA list for it. But definitely a sleeper pick for that because he has been a guy who has just done everything the Clippers need.
No, 100%. And the thing is, like, going into the series, like, we were kind of thinking, like, okay, Ivica Zubac was great all season long, especially on the defensive end, but he absolutely, like, took his game to the next level in the final 21 games. We talk about that 18-3 record, how they close out the season. But then we were wondering, is this going to translate to the playoffs? Is this actually going to be the Ivica Zubac we get there? And clearly he has been. So absolutely, shout out to him. He has been great. But Jay, just quick question. Did you think that was a game winner from Aaron Gordon? There was a lot of discussion around it. Did it count? Did it not count? What are your thoughts on kind of the game-winning dunk sort of like conundrum that people are put in?
So I'm not gonna lie, I had to watch it a couple of times, and the funny part is, I watched a Zach Lowe clip that kind of highlighted this to me as well. And he asked the question. He was like, "How many times have you watched the clip of the game winner? And more so, how many different things did you find in the clip differently from a watch to watch?" And I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to the tip dunk is just obviously the misevaluation of whether or not it comes off of their fingertips by the time that the time expires. So look, at the end of the day, that's an insane play. If there was anybody to win a game off of a dunk in the clutch,
it is Aaron Gordon.
Like, you know what I mean? So if there's anybody for it to be the most realistic player, I think especially in this first round to do it would be Aaron Gordon. Great contest by Ivica Zubac and great secondary contest by Kawhi Leonard on Nikola Jokic, by the way. I mean, it's just an amazing play. It's a reason why it's a historical, now it's like etched in history now that like this is like easily the sneakiest way you can win a basketball game. Like, this is something that you put it this way: you can't recreate this. That's the best way to put this. There's no 2K sim.
Yeah.
There's no, you know what I mean. There's no, hey, let's try to draw up a play. Like, this is just one of those things. Right place, right time, bro. Right place, right time.
Honestly, I felt the same way. Like, yes, the ball was in his fingertips, whatever you want to call it, but the ball was already in the net too. If you want to put it that way as well, especially on the dunk. At the end of the day, historic game winner, like you said, you're not going to see another play like this where Jokic is like fading away, overshoots a shot, and Aaron Gordon's at the perfect place, perfect time to tip it right back in. Insane game, insane series. Capped off with an insane game winner. Just one more thing before we move on. Do you have like any like do you have any changes? Do you think that are going to happen like at the end of this at the end of the series? Like, I think like we both thought, I had the Nuggets winning, you had the Clippers winning. Do you have any reservations about that, or do you think that's still kind of how it's going to play out?
I mean, I still feel pretty strong about the Clippers. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's the thing that really stands out to me. I mean, the biggest thing for me has just always been like Kawhi Leonard is just a playoff riser. It's like we cannot sleep on this ideology that somebody like Kawhi Leonard, they don't just float around the concept of him being a top 5 player in the league every single year when healthy for a reason. Now, understand, there's certain players that we say these type of things about, and you have to have real trepidations about because of their long-term injury history or different things they deal with. Zion Williamson is a perfect pet peeve player for me, where I fell off the bandwagon for it. Kawhi Leonard, it's well documented on this podcast. Many have heard me say, I'm starting to slowly fall off the Kawhi Leonard train because, like, it's one of those things where, like, once you step on it, you're going for a ride, and it's going to be an 82-game season-long ride. But when the postseason comes and you step off that train track, like, yo, he's going to give you what you were asking to be delivered for, right? So he's one of those guys that is just like, man, it's crazy to see him play at an elite level. Man, you wish you could see him play at an elite level for, an entire regular season. You think the Clippers would be much more viable as regular season contenders, on a year-to-year basis. They were able to stay more than afloat with him playing, a little bit more than half the season this year. But, I mean, he's just a special kind of dude. And for the Nuggets, with as many question marks as they had coming into this series in particular, TV, there's one thing we said coming into the series that will stand the test of time. As the Nuggets front office, who currently doesn't have a GM, by the way.
They don't, yeah.
You knew coming into this that the idea of simply betting on the strength of your roster was going to come with plot holes. Jokic has shown you how far he can carry without an established head coach. Aaron Gordon has shown you that he can be a secondary and tertiary option as a mainstay on this Nuggets team. The Nuggets are in an interesting space right now where we're not sure what you can and can't learn about their team because they only have the merit of they've played together so long as the thing that carries them in a series like this against a well-disciplined Clippers team that also has Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, and the guy who's not talked about enough in this series, Tyronn Lue, who has made a good handful of adjustments and decided not to wait till Game 4 to start using them. Because we know how he is with those as well. This is going to be a very interesting series to gauge for the Nuggets in the offseason because they are a team that is going to need to make a move or two. I wonder how much weight they put into a series like this with all of the different happenings that have taken place. TV, we said it a while back. This was a series where the Nuggets could have easily been down 0-2.
They could have been done 3-1 at this point if you really look at especially with like the last game and how that whole like inspired. They could definitely be down 3-1.
Yeah. So for them to be in this circumstance now, do you say we bet on the roster and even if we lose this series, we feel good about the structure and completely bypass the fact that you've been missing a consistent shot creator throughout the series, right?
Yeah.
Or do you take this and say, damn, we really were outplayed in this series, and a couple of things had to go magically well over time in Aaron Gordon. Really, Aaron Gordon is the magical guy throughout this series if we keep it at a buck, because the overtime was mainly him as well.
Yeah.
And we need to make significant change around here. And obviously, we already established that a little bit with the coaching and GM situation, but like it goes deeper into the roster construction now that things need to change. Like, that's my biggest question. That's going to be my biggest takeaway is how will this series frame the offseason for the Nuggets, who still need a GM, still need a coach, and we need to learn whether or not they feel like, Nikola Jokic is just enough to be the tide that carries all ships.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think this would the series more than anything. However, this series pans out, that we have to know that Nikola Jokic is damn good. He could take him to a decent, to pretty damn far. But there's only so much he could do, and especially against this very well defensive minded team in the Clippers, with so many guys that they're able to throw at him. Having again a defensive player of the year candidate defending him, he could do all he can, but he needs other guys to step up around him. So that's definitely something that the Nuggets should look out to do. Jay, next fill in the blank. Talking about the Lakers Timberwolves now. Lakers are down 3-1. So, Jay, I'm going to need you to answer me this. Blank is or are the biggest issues for the Los Angeles Lakers?
The biggest issue for the Los Angeles Lakers is fourth quarters. The Los Angeles Lakers have lost every single fourth quarter of the series. TV, to be more specific, the Los Angeles Lakers have not scored than 20 points in a fourth quarter through this initial 4 games of the series. Now they're about to play for their playoff lives in a little while. But this team sucks at closing games.
Yes.
They suck at closing games. They're getting away with murder. And honestly, this should have been a clean sweep. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. Game three shouldn't have happened. If the first quarter, where Minnesota only scores 15 points, if the first quarter they close that gap and they score anywhere between the 22 to 28 that they ended up getting in the second and third quarter later on, this series is over. This series is over. The fact that it's a game 5 is built strictly off of the fact that the Timberwolves could not hit shots in the first quarter of game 3. If that doesn't happen, we're talking about them in a clean sweep with Memphis and the Miami Heat.
They basically would have got Phoenix Suns like last. They would basically have got Phoenix Suns like last year.
They would have got exactly. They would have got the Phoenix Sun treatment from last year. We would already be headlining the what did I say last episode? Ant the OG Slayer, right? Packing up yet another OG, sending them out in the first round in disgusting fashion, right? We would already be starting this convo, and it might still happen. Who knows? I'm gonna give LeBron James the benefit of the doubt. Who knows? But the fourth quarter for this team has been horrendous, and it's been the thing that's been killing them the entire series, bro.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think what your fill in the blank does is actually kind of goes into mine too. Because my fill in the blank is lack of urgency has been the problem with the Los Angeles Lakers. The lack of urgency. And I think we talk about the fourth quarter, man. This team just makes so many mental lapses in the fourth quarter, which is really strange for a LeBron and Luka-led team. Whether it's Luka just looking for a call, not being able to get back on offense, and then the Timberwolves would get an easy bucket. Whether it's LeBron Jay, we had another Chicago Bulls situation where LeBron just completely missed an inbound.
I'm saying.
For a team led by these two guys, we went into the series talking about they have Luka, they have LeBron, these guys are playoff razors. We trust them. It's all about the other guys. Right. Jay, they have given us caution to worry in this series because not only LeBron, I mean LeBron's been great defensively all series. I will say that. For someone who's freaking 40 years old, he's really trying to pick it up defensively, and he's had some good offensive games. But Jay, I don't want to big up Nico Harrison here. I don't. But Jay, that defense on Luka Doncic, especially, I've noticed that especially over the last 2 games, horrendous. They are treating Luka Doncic like other teams treated Rudy Gobert in the past. Put him on an island, and he can't stop anything. They're literally putting him in every single action. Every single action that Timberwolves do, they try to do it through Luka. And I know there was that stomach bug that he went through. Maybe he's dealing with some sort of nagging injury. It doesn't matter. Where's the effort? And I think that we've seen in the past that Luka can be a passable defender when his back is put against the wall. But it shouldn't have to be like that. I talk about the sense of urgency. This should have been there since game 1. And the fact that they kind of let the Timberwolves play their own game, kind of let them dictate the series, now you're okay, maybe the Lakers do need to step up. Maybe they do step up and try and tie up the series. It might be too little too late. last game was their chance, and now they're down 3-1. Everyone knows the stat, and if you're up 3-1 in the series, you're a 93% chance of winning the series. Only I think 13 times in NBA history where someone has come back down 3-1, even though multiple of them have been Doc Rivers. But at the same time, man, the Lakers feel like a team where we've seen good portions of their game, and we see the best of them throughout the series. But when it really comes down to it, and I think it also shows in the last game where JJ Redick did not make a single substitution in the second half. Like, when the Timberwolves were making adjustments, I don't think the Lakers were able to. So, more than anything, man, just the lack of urgency in this team, and now they're on the brink of getting eliminated.
Yeah, I think the trickiest part with the Lakers too, when you like think about just their team structure, you know what's really funny about them? I thought about this the other day. So like just entertain me for a second, because I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought about it from the perspective of like their just roster construction. Obviously, after acquiring Luka Doncic, which of course is still you do that 10 times out of 10, right?
Yeah.
But you just wonder, do you like remember like those OKC like 2014, 2015-esque like OKC teams where it felt like it was Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant and just everybody else was just like, brother, go out and defend, please.
Oh, yeah, you got the Cephaloshes of the world. You got the Andre Robersons, the Terrence
Yeah, you know what I mean? And this roster is giving a lot of that kind of structure of like, yo, we got two superheroes over here, right? That we know can go get buckets. So and Austin Reeves has been He's been
on and off. He's had his moments.
He's been productive. I'm not gonna say he's not looking like what people were saying when people were saying Austin Reeves looks like the best third option in the league. He's not looking like that right now.
No, he's not. He's not.
Right? But he's been productive. But for the most part, bro, this team reminds me a lot of like those 2013, 2014, 2015 OKC Thunder teams where it's like, yo, we got Kevin Durant and we got Russell Westbrook. I think KD won an MVP during that time period. I think Russell Westbrook won an MVP during that time period. And you were building off the merit of like, yo, we got two MVPs. They both get buckets. When it comes down to clutch time, we already know KD is that guy. We seen him do it against Memphis. We seen him do it against San Antonio. We seen him do it against Dallas, right? You got this track record, right? That tells you like, yo, regardless of the circumstances, we got two dudes you don't play with. So as long as we got guys who can guard, we're good. Here's the difference. Russell Westbrook was not as big of a liability defensively as Luka Doncic has been through the first 4 games of the series.
And they had a better roster to kind of like make up for their errors. This team, like you said, it's incomplete. You mentioned it earlier. It's basically an incomplete roster.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, obviously, because you look at those rosters back with OKC, they still have Steven Adams, right? They still are in a position where they have Ibaka at the time, who's playing at a relatively good rate. You have Reggie Jackson coming off the bench. I'm kind of bringing up some guys now because I'm looking at the list for people, and I'm like, no, you actually, Dion Waiters was still solid for them for about a year or two. Like, these are some guys that you can say, like, okay, generate shots or play relatively well within a certain role.
Yeah.
During this series, I'm going to be honest with you, for the Lakers, when you go past LeBron and you go past Luka Doncic, the only person who truly feels like a quote-unquote star in their role through this series has been Jarred Vanderbilt, in my personal opinion.
I want to shout out Rui.
I'm going to give Rui his respect. But I think Jarred Vanderbilt as a guy who's responded well to Minnesota's physicality.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
I think maybe that's where I'm leaning.
Yeah,
but
fair. Okay.
In terms of star in their role, I believe that Jarred Vanderbilt has probably been the best player in that circumstance for the Lakers. Rui's probably a close second, if not maybe like a 1B when we have that conversation, because Rui has kind of done a little bit of everything that JJ's had to ask him to do throughout this series. So power to him for that. But like, guys are just like, like you said it beforehand, it just feels like the puzzle pieces are not fitting together right now, which is so weird because on the back half of the season, this team kind of looked like they were putting it together despite the fact that we knew their roster had some misconceptions to it. Now it feels like everything we were worried about when the Luka Doncic trade first happened, it's like all of a sudden the playoffs peeled back the curtain and revealed all the true details that were missed on while they were winning games at the back half of the regular season. But that's the deceptive part of March and April basketball for you, man. You gotta weigh the good and the bad when you're looking at those games, because a lot of teams are playing for different things.
Yeah.
in that last month and a half.
No, 100%. And this is where I kind of want to give the Timberwolves credit because both these teams have made some major moves this season. Whether it's the Timberwolves, like right before the season started, of course, the Lakers with the Luka Doncic trade.
Right.
These guys have figured it out. And for the most part, I mean, we told Julius Randle to kind of play within the role. It's Jay. He's been great. He has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to shout out
Yeah.
Julius Randle. For as much as we give him flack on the show, he has been fantastic. Shout out to Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Dante DiVincenzo, who had like a very slow start to the season, has made some big plays in here. Naz Reid playing like more minutes than Rudy Gobert this series. I said after that game 2 loss, they need Naz Reid to play more minutes because clearly the offense runs a lot better when he's on the court. Look at that. Every time that he like has more minutes than Rudy Gobert, they win games. So
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, like the Timberwolves team, they've gone through the struggles. And you talk about kind of like March and April basketball, they kind of went on the streak there at the end too, but they've kind of went through the trials and tribulations early enough where you feel comfortable going into the into this playoffs. That they're probably the more well-rounded, they're probably the more complete basketball team. And they can play multiple styles, and with the overwhelming aggression, the overwhelming physicality that they put on the Lakers, they clearly see like the better team. And if they end up winning, I'm gonna put my hands up, Jay. Like this Timberwolves team on back-to-back years has both proven me wrong in the first round.
Yeah, I think the most special thing about this Timberwolves team, shout out Julius Randle because I want to say it as well because he's obviously really stepped up in a real way, and we like TV said, we crack our jokes over here on the podcast, but we got to give credit where credit is due when we know we're wrong. And Julius Randle, at least through round 1, has shown us like, yo, I'm still a 20+ point per game scorer that can like get things done in a postseason setting. Like, yes, his history gives you cause to pause.
Yes,
but
100. Yeah, for sure.
clearly, this Lakers team was on his bulletin board because he has come out swinging. He has shot the ball relatively well this series, and he's come out aggressive. And I love that for him because the most special thing about this Minnesota Timberwolves team, even dating back to last year, the swag of Anthony Edwards permeating through this team on a game-to-game basis, bro, is actually crazy. Like, like, there's guys, they talked about this with Baker Mayfield when he got drafted to the Cleveland Browns years ago in football, right? Talking about this concept of the Pied Piper. Like when a guy like that steps into the room, a charismatic guy like that steps into the room, everybody just flocks to the energy and follows. It feels like Anthony Edwards comes into these series and says, yo, we got to put him away.
He's the favorite. He always feels like he's the favorite in every series.
He comes into every single series like, why is that guy considered better than me? He always comes into every series as, why are we plus 500 in sports books as like being deserving of winning this series when we've put together just as much of a good collection of, regular season stretches as the Los Angeles Lakers, as the Phoenix Suns, right? And he comes into this series and he comes out the gate so winging. Has he had multiple 40 balls this series as well?
No, he's had one, but I think he had like one like high
39.
30,
I think it was like 39 points in another game ago. So comes out swinging. He's got Jaden McDaniels hitting fall away jumpers.
You have Naz Reid looking like
crazy.
Prime Kevin Love
out here smacking 3-pointers from the corner.
Yeah.
Julius Randle playing downhill, not settling for mid-range jumpers. Shout out Carmelo Anthony, but like this is a series where I felt like paint touches from Julius Randle, old school like New Orleans Pelican style Julius Randle is really thriving right now because I don't think the Lakers have a physical body to hang with him. And it's kind of shown throughout this series, which is also kind of what's allowed the Timberwolves to play small ball the way they have with Naz Reid. This team goes as Anthony Edwards goes. And I know that sounds so like cliche to say because it's like, duh, he's their best player. No, bro. No,
it's different.
The way that they hop and skip to the flow that he rolls with, when this team is on one, it's like, who's messing with them? If you need to be physical, let's fight. If you want to go in a 3-point shootout, Ant's putting up 12 of them jokers, and Naz Reid's right behind him with 8 of his own, right? If you need to play a game that's a little bit more finesse in the half court, fine. Mike Conley, come help us operate so that we can slow the game down, and then we're going to get guys like Dante DiVincenzo operated in a way where he can handle things like pin downs to get 3-point shots up and generate more efficient offense. It's like no matter what flavor you want, if you got Anthony Edwards in mode, everybody else just falls in place. It's basically the exact opposite of what we were saying with the Lakers in terms of the puzzle piece and fitting it feels like with the Timberwolves, everybody's so cohesive at the same time, and they're putting masterclass games together. Like I said, if they don't have that bad first quarter shooting wise in game 3, this series is over already. That goes to tell you this Timberwolves team is putting belt to ass, and they not really scared of anybody. And you gotta respect it, bro, because they are still a youthful team, even with the fact that they've got some vets that are killing right now, and the fact that they were coming out swinging against a team with LeBron James or Luka Doncic on the other side of it. Hey man, the Timberwolves are not scared of anybody. They've proven this now back-to-back years. We're gonna have to start putting some more respect on.
No, I mean, like, I just, it brings, what you've been talking about brings you back to an interview where Dante DiVincenzo, I think it was like the Young Men in the Three podcast, the old JJ Redick podcast, which they've been doing like throughout the season, where he said, like, obviously he felt hurt being traded by the New York Knicks, but the minute he got to Minnesota, he felt right at home because he just, like, that infectious energy of Anthony Edwards just freaking just like, like you said, permeates you, like, it goes through the rest of the team, and it just feels so cohesive together. The fact that everyone, like once like everyone is on, they like Anthony Edwards is becoming like more of a playmaker. You have all these guys just kind of like moving into the right spots and playing exactly like what they need to do. Fantastic. I know we were talking about like what's wrong with the Lakers, but the Timberwolves deserve so much freaking love here.
Yes.
They're up 3-1 for a reason. And Jay, I know like maybe there's not as much confidence with this team compared to the team last year, but you can't be sleeping on them, especially what they got the next series probably versus the, like, who's the 2 seed right now? Oh, it's the Rockets versus the Warriors, man. I'm telling you, the tour for Anthony Edwards might continue if the Warriors end up beating the Rockets, and he has to face off against that Warriors team, and you know that team wants to get chippy, so it's good. The Timberwolves have been great. Shout out to them, but yeah, the Lakers definitely are in mad trouble. Jay, next series we're gonna head into Knicks Pistons. Crazy last few games. The Knicks are up 3-1. But I want to shout out the freaking duo of Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, who Jalen Brunson's been probably one of the best players in the playoffs for us in this entire throughout this early part of the playoffs. And then Karl-Anthony Towns, have you seen that Game 4 win where he scored like 8 points in the final 2 minutes? Absolutely closed out the game for the Knicks where they were down against the Pistons. This duo has been killing it all season long, and now it's transferring to the playoffs. Jay, my fill in the blank. Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson is a top blank duo in the NBA.
So I had to sit down and really think about this one because at the end of the day, we're still talking about individual talents. I'm going to give Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, I'm going to give them top 8. I don't know where in the 8. That's where things get a little tricky. But I'm going to give them top 8. We might have to run down some duos and figure out who we can cross off the list. But I think when you look at the on-ball creativity of Jalen Brunson and his ability to finish games, you know, obviously, I think it was maybe a game or two ago, had 14 in the fourth, like just hyper productive, and probably gonna win clutch player of the clutch.
He already won it.
He already won and won clutch player of the year for a reason. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Karl-Anthony Towns, for me, it's touch and go. I'm always kind of touch and go about Karl-Anthony Towns because his inconsistencies are always a little tricky. This series has been really good for him. He did have a 10-point dub. I believe it was game 2.
Yeah.
But for the main part, like, he's been really, really productive. My biggest thing is, like, again, from an individual talent standpoint, the league is kind of built off duos right now.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wonder if I can like confidently put them top 5, knowing the powers that be. Do you have some duos in mind that maybe like we can gauge them again?
In terms of the duos that these guys, I looked at this a little bit differently. Like, yes, there are like individual talent in terms of like these duos, but I like to say like the best duos in the league are kind of 2 teammates that just kind of like play off each other well and how well they play together. So top 8, sure. I'm going to say like top 4. I think they have been, in terms of like how they're able to play together, the way that like at their very best at both these seasons, like Jalen Brunson, if he wasn't maybe like injured for like that last part of the year, potentially all NBA second, bordering on all NBA first team if he was able to continue his flow from the rest of the season. Karl-Anthony Towns, again, all NBA level player. And the fact that they like work so directly with one another and the way that that's been like translated throughout the entire year, I think that should give them merit in their top 4 discussion. I mean, Jay, we'll go through some of the duos. Tell me if you think that these guys are that if you would take Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson over them, right? Okay. So Tatum and Brown.
I'm taking them. I'm taking Tatum and Brown.
Taking Tatum and Brown. Yeah, those are one of the teams I have up there. We got Giannis and Damian Lillard.
That one's looking tricky. I think
No,
Giannis carries
pre-injury. We'll
now.
say
Yeah,
pre-injury. Like
I know, but that's. I mean,
I
it's.
would take Cat Brunson if it was like at least duo wise.
I and that's kind of my point because I think still they were supposed to almost be like Giannis and Dame were supposed to be like insane offensive operators to the point that they were supposed to be like a top 5 offense, top 3 offense in the league every single season that they played together so far. And they haven't been. They just have not been
Yeah.
equal. And when you talk about cohesion, they just have not played off of each other enough in a way to be this top 3 offense in the league that we kind of expected when they linked up. I might actually take Cat and Brunson. I ain't gonna front.
No, I would 100% take those two for sure. At least at this very moment, at least even a pre-injury. If you look at the best of what Dame and Giannis have to offer between these two, I would take Cat and Brunson.
Yeah.
J-Dub and SGA.
Oh, I think I'm taking SGA and J-Dub. I'm not gonna lie.
Really? I would take Cat and Brunson. I understand like if you would. I feel like Shea kind of carries it a little bit more, but I feel like as like a kind of like a I don't know.
I think Shea is just as good of an offensive engine, obviously, if not better. Probably considerably better than Jalen Brunson. I think in the clutch you can trust SGA, and I think that J-Dub's versatility is something that just gives you the chance to like fit in, especially next to Shea. He just can play wherever you need him to be. Score when you need him, defend when you need him, play big man high low game when you need him to. Cat is kind of like he can play between this 4-5 tweener thing, but we just know he's better as a 5 that spaces.
Fine. Okay. Just a couple more duels here. Murray and Jokic.
I ain't gonna lie, bro. That's looking like a Cat Brunson situation.
At the moment, yeah, I would.
Yeah, because I think that I think you would look at that at first and be like, Nikola Jokic, but hard carry. But it's like if it's hard carry, then when we're having a conversation about cohesion in terms of duos, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray are like this, but Jamal Murray has not been clicking at that same 2-man pick and roll. Nobody can stop us rate that they were in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, right? So
exactly.
It's a little fishy. Cat and Brunson might got that one. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, no. Just a couple more over here. We got the two new duos, Jimmy and Steph. I would take at least like I don't think we've seen enough of those two together.
That one's a little tricky. I think if they're playing especially if you look at when Jimmy first got there and you look at that, okay, they're playing at full click. I actually think I would take Jimmy and Steph. I think I would.
Okay, I would take Cam Brunson there. Another one, Luka and LeBron.
I think Luka and LeBron still above them. I ain't go for it.
I would put them above them.
This series right now ain't proving my point, but like I think that those two, the way they play off of each other, they're walking 60 points per game.
But there's a lot of them there. I mean, those are quite the amount of duels I put there. I mean, you would have them like top. It feels like you would have them maybe top 6, top 7. Like if anything,
like I said top 8. Like I said, I didn't go down like a perfect list. I think I would have them around like top 6, top 7 is probably a little bit better than where I had. 8 was probably playing it safe, just because I was like still, a little. I have a little bit of trepidations about the Giannis Dame thing, but at the same time, they've because they've both dealt with injuries throughout their tenures together in Milwaukee. But at the same time, like Cat and Brunson in 1 year has just been one of the most productive 1-5 combos we've seen in a while, and obviously that's in combination with like guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, right? We've seen that duo before play at such a high level, and we've seen a couple of other groups where like they're just the synergy of it all really works because of the position of value. So they're up there though. They're definitely up there. Now I don't want to use one season as too much of a measuring stick, but they are coming out the gate swinging as one of the better duos in the league. That is for sure.
And they've been, I mean, like you said, besides the Game 2 loss, both of them have been absolutely killing it, and like they're 1-1 away against the Detroit Pistons team, who could argue it's 2-2, especially after that missed foul call at the end of Game 4. But it looks like the Knicks are in the driver's seat right now. Any trepidation about the series? Do you think the Knicks close it out? Just be quickly before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I believe I had this series going 7, right? This was one of those series where I said the Detroit Pistons physicality is going to be one of those things that responds. One thing that doesn't outplay physicality? Late game execution, right? We just talked about this with the Lakers. This team could have been in a much different position had game one went differently, right?
Yeah.
Game one goes differently where you blow, I believe it was like a 21-point lead or something like
No,
that.
they gave up a 21-0 run. So basically,
Yeah.
their home games. Yeah.
21-0 run in the fourth, basically to lose the game. And game four, I believe the refs admitted that they got the call wrong by
They
not
did.
getting
They
the
did.
foul call on Tim
Yes.
Hardaway Jr.'s 3-point attempt.
Yes. Yeah.
So
They
that's
said
a bad luck of the draw. That's a bad luck of the draw. But those are two games that you just can't get back, right? Those are
Yeah.
unfortunately two games you can't get back. This series will be completely different had those two things went a little bit differently. But that comes with being a young team, man. I ain't gonna lie. That's part of the that's part of hitting your head on the hardwood floor when it comes to being one of these young teams in the postseason. Is just one different bounce of the ball, or maybe in case of game one, a couple of strings of runs could be the difference between winning a series and getting put out in 4 to 5 games. I think the Knicks actually are heavily favored going into this game 5, and I think they're gonna get it. I think they're gonna get it done. Unfortunately.
No, 100%. I mean, over the past 2 games, they freaking lost by a combined of 3 points. That kind of tells you kind of all you need to know. I mean, in terms of late game execution, we talk about how much like the offense is gonna like this. Like it's not the same physical team of the New York Knicks of the past like couple years, but this team offensively is very hard to stop, and especially like late game execution with how good Jalen Brunson has been in the fourth quarter, they've shown it in this playoffs. Like if it really comes down to it, the Knicks are winning the basketball game, and they've been doing it for 3-1. So yeah, shout out to the Knicks. They're probably going to move on, but hopefully the series gets close. Hopefully, actually, by the time we do the next podcast, that we can talk like, game 7, this and that. But we're going to have to wait and see. Yeah. Jay, next question, and this one's going to hit a bit because the Milwaukee Bucks, Indiana Pacers, interesting series, but unfortunately, in the last game, Dame went down with an injury. He was holding behind the ankle, and if you're a basketball fan for long enough, we all know what that means. We've seen too many Achilles tears. We've seen a lot of ACL sort of injuries, and when it was a non-contact injury like that, you knew something bad was happening. They confirmed that it was a torn left Achilles, and the swing for the fences to hoping that they get that number 2 guy next to Giannis kind of feels like it's over, Jay. And this is where I'm gonna do my my fill in the blank. Next season, the Milwaukee Bucks should be blank.
Next season, the Milwaukee Bucks should be what 2K calls sellers. They should be sellers. The reason why is because if you look at this roster moving forward, they have Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo both making $54 million in the season of 2025-2026. And guess who their only players definitively signed through next season are? Kyle Kuzma, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, and Tyler Smith. All of their other interesting guys that you have to keep an eye out on, Gary Trent Jr., who might be shooting himself into a contract potentially, Taurean Prince, Brook Lopez, those guys, unrestricted free agents. Bobby Portis, he has a player option for $13 million. He might pick it up, but if he does, he's a 1-year rental before becoming an unrestricted free agent the following season. Pat Connaughton, who we thought probably was going to end up getting traded at this trade deadline to try to get some kind of little compensation for him, he has a player option for $9.4 million. He becomes an unrestricted free agent. Yeah. He's 100% going to take it. Yeah, I would not be surprised if him and Kevin Porter Jr., who also has a player option, get potentially packaged together to maybe try to go get something. This is a team that they are going to have to look to really make their cap stretch. Because when you got your 2 top guys getting paid 54 M's, and one of them might not even play next season.
He's not. He's not playing.
You gotta start preparing for a doomsday. And doomsday comes in the form, and I hate being this guy because that's usually how it goes, but doomsday comes in the form of the fact that going into next season, Giannis will only have 1 more guaranteed year on the books. He has a player option, obviously, after that. Now, the player option is for $62 million in 2027, 2028. We think he's probably going to pick it up. Yeah. Right.
Well, who knows? I mean, he's going to be over 30 at that point. He might be kind of looking for his, big. That's when he can get like that like major contract because like after you turn 30, after making that many All NBAs, winning the MVPs, you can get not just a supermax, you can get that supermax that we've seen that like Luka Doncic is going to get after this contract. You know what I mean? So like
you're
that's
definitely right.
for Giannis.
But see, actually, your point plays into something that I think is even more important for Milwaukee. Do you try to get ahead of it?
This kind of goes again, which that's interesting because my fill in the blank for this is the next season. The Milwaukee Bucks should be waiting on Giannis, and this is what I mean by that.
Okay,
they've been with him for 11 years. They've built the team. They won a championship. They let him make, maybe for good or for bad, some like very interesting decisions. The firing of Adrian Griffin, bringing in Doc Rivers, all that. At this point, I feel like Giannis, I think he's like reached that point, like if Jokic does at some point, like he's reached that like level of like Bucks legendary status that he can kind of decide at this point, like what do I want to do in my career. I don't think anyone's gonna be mad if he asks for a trade, and if he wants to stay, I wouldn't blame him for that either because of the amount, like the roots he's built in the community, the way that he's been able to grow with the Milwaukee Bucks organization. I feel like at this point, like there's so many articles, there's so many talking points about trading Giannis. So many guys saying, "Oh, let's bring him to Miami, let's bring him to New York." I feel like people have been waiting on this downfall for years at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we gotta let Giannis make that decision because I feel like he has the grace to do so.
Yes.
I think more than anything, if he wants to ride this out, if he feels like, you know what, I want to be here through the thick, I want to be here through the thin. That feels like something in his personality, right? He wants to be kind of like through it, like the ups and downs, and try to do it. Like he mentions Dirk a lot. He mentions Tim Duncan. Those are the guys he really looks up to. And like if he wants to follow that route, sure, why not? But at the same time, if he feels like another big contract is coming, if he feels like he still wants to be competing for championships, because clearly this roster is not going to do it, no matter what trade you do going forward. And if you want to keep Giannis, that's not going to do it. Especially now that they have no draft picks. Jay, remember, they traded the draft pick to get Kyle Kuzma. And that has blown for their face. Yeah. And they traded away like one of Giannis' boys, Chris Middleton, as well, in a very unceremonious way, by the way, for one of the Bucks legend. So, as much as people want to start moving away Giannis right away, I say we give him the grace to let him choose. If he requests for a trade, he deserves to be looked out for, and then the bidding war can start. Or if he wants to ride out well with the Bucks, don't judge him for that because he's been there through the highs of the Milwaukee Bucks franchise. He's been there at the lows of the lows when they drafted him as an extremely raw prospect and developed him into one of the best players of this current generation. I know it's nice to see him in a bigger market. I know we want to like create these trade packages and everything, but more than anything, I say that the Bucks, no matter what happens, whatever season this season go through, let Giannis decide, and then that's where the direction you go to.
I completely agree. I think the biggest elephant in the room just is the fact that
people have not said this enough this season, but I just went through the cap sheet for you guys. The Milwaukee Bucks circumstance is not that much different from the shit show we see in Phoenix right now. It hasn't been discussed enough, but from a financial situation and a future roster construction standpoint, Milwaukee is in no better structure than Phoenix is right now. The biggest
especially now with the Dame injury, yeah, they're basically like near the same level, yeah.
Especially with the Dame injury, because I was going to say the biggest calling card or the biggest feather in the cap for Phoenix is they have Devin Booker.
Yeah.
And Devin Booker, he counts as a twofold. Obviously, one, he's younger than all of the other guys that we're having a conversation about, including Giannis Antetokounmpo, right?
Yeah.
Number two is because he's younger, you have the choice of either trading him for high value or just hitting the reset button again and building around him again.
Mm-hmm.
Giannis is in a very different situation because hitting the reset button is more like a retooling if you're going to build around a guy that's that special and wants to play for championships. You also have to ask yourself what a trade package for Giannis Antetokounmpo looks like, because I will say Giannis is one of those superstars, I think kind of like Luka Doncic in an interesting way, that you kind of have to build your roster around. You don't acquire Giannis and add him in and he's the superstar that's like, he's the cherry on top. He's kind of a guy that you have to frame your... The Milwaukee Bucks have been building a system around Giannis for the better part of 5 years now. right?
Even longer, in my opinion.
Even longer, yeah, maybe even longer. Truthfully, in terms of really finding
Like,
what
yeah,
fits
7, 8
best.
years, yeah.
Yeah. So he is a system unto himself, right? It's not the tween independent, dribble on the outside, all the heliocentric stuff that
Yeah.
comes to mind. But he is a system in itself. So what does a trade package for Giannis look like? Knowing that when you get him, there's going to be some major overhauls you're going to have to make happen around it to really fit what he does. So there's a big difference between Milwaukee and Phoenix. But at the same time, they're both kind of walking down this path of, hey, yo, it ain't getting done through the draft. Our two superstars are getting paid bandos by the dozen. And our remaining, core guys, I believe Milwaukee can aggregate contracts a little bit more. I don't know if they've passed the second apron or not. I know Phoenix is cooked on that part because the Bradley Beal part puts them over the top. But the cap flexibility aspect of it also is just its own thing to maneuver. So, like you said, I think it's a really good point to say Giannis is the determining factor. At the end of the day, whatever Giannis wants to do, Milwaukee should do it. Because at the end of the day, first of all, you just have to respect his superstardom as a guy that's like a staple of your franchise and has been like the only staple of your franchise dating back to like what your next best player that we think of is like Michael Redd or something like that.
Well, of this current generation, I mean, Kareem for sure.
Obviously, but that's like going so far back that it like sets a completely different precedent.
Yeah, no. Over the last 50 years, Giannis has been like the basic, like
easily
the biggest bright spot. Yeah,
yeah. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt like regardless of what you independently want to do, because you can say whatever you want to do, right? But that cap sheet says you're only going to be able to do so much regardless. And the only thing that changes in that cap sheet that gives you any more or any less flexibility is whatever Giannis says he wants to do. If he wants to stay, your flexibility, minimal. But you have Giannis. If he says he wants to leave, cap flexibility maybe significantly changes. But you're taking a step back. What he chooses is going to be the determining factor. That sounds like, a duh, but no. It really isn't that simple, because as a team with no draft picks, flexibility is like a big currency in this version of the NBA with so many teams with so many superstar-led teams floating around the second apron or above the second apron already.
Yeah.
Milwaukee is in that boat.
And their second biggest asset just went down and basically became a null asset at this point. So they have nothing really else to trade for. Yeah. It's a super unfortunate situation. Hopefully, one, Dame is doing all right now. Two, if he's be able to just get back on the basketball court, because Jay, we talked about before the series, him coming back from the blood clot felt like it was a bit rushed, but the fact that you kind of compound out with this like brutal leg injury at the age of 34, I'm not gonna say it's the end of Damian Lillard, but like kind of like the Damian Lillard we all know and love. It'd be very surprising to see if he's like anywhere back to this level, unfortunately.
For sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it's gonna. Hopefully, he's doing all right. But yeah, the Bucks' future is all in the hands of Giannis. He wants to stay. He wants to ride it out. They're gonna have to try and like do what they can with that sort of flexibility. But if he is wanting to go, obviously, no one's gonna blame him, and they're gonna have to restart from there. Jay, moving on to the next series, the Celtics versus the Orlando Magic. Unfortunately, my Celtics in 7 might not come true, even though the Magic have kept a lot of these games close. They just have no offense in that fourth quarter. Jay, I'm just going to keep it simple for you for this fill in the blank. Celtics look damn good. Celtics have a blank % chance of repeating.
Celtics have a blank chance of repeating. So, in my personal opinion, I think this is in conjunction with the likelihood that they come out of the Eastern Conference. Because if I'm the Celtics right now, I don't know who I'm scared of out west just yet. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who I'm scared of out west at this very moment. Oklahoma City is probably at the top of that list very definitively. But also, how much did we learn about OKC through the Memphis series? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's still tricky. I'm not trying to question OKC's merit in the championship structure, but
we're gonna have to see like where until we get to that point, if we end up seeing them in the finals, right?
We have to see them. I think we just need to see them in a more competitive style series. We knew going in, we said it going in, that OKC was mopping the floor with whoever came out of the 8 seed game, right? So we kind of already felt like Memphis was overmatched. They were built relatively well to play with the athleticism of OKC, but we kind of felt like OKC had the answer for them pretty easily. I think this next series will be really important, especially depending on who they land up against. I'm gonna give the Celtics a 55% chance.
Okay.
And the reason that might be high, it might be low, depends on who you speak to. But I think I'm putting a lot of weight on their ability to come out of the Eastern Conference. And the reason why I put so much weight on that is because, and I don't want to overplay this because of the same reasons that I just said with OKC could probably be applied over here with this team as well. The Cleveland Cavaliers look damn good, brother. They look damn good. And if they're going to be hitting their three-point shots at that kind of rate, bro, they can keep up with the Celtics. And at that point, now you're just asking guys to be able to close games. And I trust Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, out of all the players in the postseason so far, right? Donovan Mitchell might be top 6 in terms of guys I would put my stock in to help close a basketball game for me. He would be top 6 amongst just about everybody I could think of in these playoffs so far through the first round in terms of closing a basketball game, playing at a high level. And the Knicks also have themselves one damn good closer in Jalen Brunson. And
I mean,
the Celtics, the one thing that gets me with the Celtics is they love to play with their food. And I think one of the things that worries, shoot, they're doing it with Orlando right now. I don't think Orlando should have won a game. If I'm being honest with you, I don't think Orlando should have won a game. This series should have been over. The fact that this is going to Game 5 is surprising.
Yeah, you could also flip it because the Orlando Magic had chances to win
you can, but I think that goes to my point is this is a team that plays around with their food to a point that I think a team like Cleveland is not playing with them. A team like New York, if healthy, not playing with them.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And so now you have to ask yourself a question you shouldn't have to ask about a lot of championship teams, which is which version of you are, or which version of you are you going to be in a series like this? Which series is going to bring out the best of you to come show us why you should be a repeat champion, right?
Yeah.
That's not a question we should normally have about a team that's looking to repeat. Yet here we are yet again in another postseason asking ourselves, how good are the Celtics really? Because on a night-to-night basis, we have to ask ourselves which version we're getting.
Yeah.
And that worries me because then when you look at a team like the Clippers, when you look at a team like Golden State when they're fighting at a high clip, and if they get Jimmy Butler back, we know Jimmy Butler's a Celtics assassin, right? If you look at these different type of teams that they might have to run into coming out of the West, and then obviously I already mentioned 2 out the East that I think are very viable. Boston does not have the wiggle room to play around. And so series like this one against the Magic that should have been a wash, that aren't a wash now. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. I think they're going to win the Game 5 and it's going to be over.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, these are the kind of series like this, like what the Cleveland Cavaliers just did. They won by 50 plus in a closeout Game 4. That's how a championship contender stamps out. You know, a round 1 series. That's how a championship caliber team finishes off a round 1 series when you're a heavy favorite. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is not the type of team that we've seen through 4 games gives me cause to pause. But 55 because at the end of the day, they're just that damn talented.
No, I'm very close to you. I put 60%. And what's funny is your concerns with the Orlando Magic. I thought those were the concerns that were gonna come out of the series if it went 7. But the thing is, we're still having these concerns, and it's gonna probably be a 5-game series because the Magic have but the Magic have really locked down defensively to the point where they've kind of in certain moments have nullified a Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum at certain times. When you look at that one win that they had, they forced to combine 16 turnovers from those two, Jay. They forced to combine 16 turnovers. But yeah, the Celtics are probably going to win the series. They're probably going to win in 5. Do I have as much confidence as I did before the playoffs? Not really. Especially against seeing how well the Knicks have played in these late game situations. Tatum has been doing that too, but at the same time, the Knicks are doing it against honestly a better team in the Detroit Pistons. So I'm gonna give them a 60% just because we know when they're on, they are on. I don't think they've found their 3-point shot yet because the freaking Orlando Magic are running them off the three. Maybe they find the stroke back against the New York Knicks. But at the same time, there is like I think when I watch this first round, and this is like what I like to see, like playoff basketball. You see some teams like you could see a path to victory for, like you said, the Knicks. I even see a path to victory if they end up facing the freaking when the Pacers face them. Obviously the Cavaliers, and you see how well that they've been playing. Even some teams out west. So like in a year where it felt like the Celtics were a foregone conclusion, and people even going into this playoffs had questions about the Cleveland Cavaliers and how they would look after a okay end to the season, even though they finished as the number 1 seed. The Celtics feel like they're more threatened than we felt like throughout this entire season.
Yeah, it's something about the Celtics that they love to kind of like tear at the heartstrings of people who have high expectations for them.
Yeah.
It's something about the Celtics where they just kind of look at high expectations as something that's just like chatter in the background. And although that's good that you're a team that is able to block out the noise, there does come a point where in order to be considered as a real champion, we have to be able to look at you and say you get business handled when necessary. And you don't want to overstate, again, winning a series in 5 games because that's still significantly good, right? Because you're not being pushed by an Orlando Magic team. But it's the fact that the series could look so much different and it's going to 5 in spite of that, right? So it's going to 5
and Orlando could actually be 2-2 right now.
Yeah, they could be for sure.
Right? So it's the fact that you frame it, again, it goes the same way as when we were talking about the Denver Nuggets versus the LA Clippers series. The ball bounces differently, 1 or 2 different ways, and that Nuggets-Clippers series is over. The same thing could be said in this situation where instead of it being them up 3-1 going back home, this could be 2-2 and they're playing for taking back control of the series. It could be that simple. And the Celtics are just too good for us to be having that conversation against our Orlando Magic team that didn't pick up the pieces until the back half of the season when Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner were back kind of fully healthy. And mind you, they're doing this without Jalen Suggs on the floor.
Yes, for sure. They're still playing like an incredible defensive team, even without their best guard defender. True. But yeah, no, a legitimate dynamic guard could have really changed the series up for the Orlando Magic. But at the same time, the Celtics are taking care of things, but we were expecting a more dominant fashion for sure. Jay, moving on to the next one. And I mean, we talked about the Cavs enough and how great they are, and you mentioned beat the Miami Heat by 55 in their last game, the 4th highest point differential in a playoff game in NBA history. Mm-hmm. Incredible how like that game went. If you were watching it was actually ridiculous how much the Cavs were hitting their shots. But Jay, I'm just gonna give you this question from a Miami Heat's perspective. The Miami Heat must blank this roster.
The Miami Heat must trust this roster.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I feel like at the end of the day, you have to look at the circumstances for what they are. The Jimmy Butler trade was going to be a low blow. It wasn't going to be merit. There was not going to be any merit to the rest of the season after it took place. We knew that the Miami Heat got into the postseason strictly off of the fact that the bottom portion of the Eastern Conference is pretty dog water, right? And when you look at the structure of their team, they've got pieces that play well, bro. Bam is still a solid, top 5, top 7 player at his position. Tyler Hero had a breakout year as an all-star this year. Terry Rozier completely, was underwhelming this year, but he's going to be an expiring contract next season, which gives them some flexibility. Andrew Wiggins, he's a guy that I think he's always been kind of like a steady ship. He's going to give you what he gives you, and you just have to kind of work within that. I love what Kel'el Ware was able to do with the back half of the season, especially after the All-Star break.
Yeah.
I think this was just a sophomore slump for Jaime Jaquez, so I have high expectations for him in year 3, who I think hopefully will be empowered a little bit more.
And same thing goes for Nikola Jovic, who I think also was another player who could kind of maybe build off of having a greater role this year, because he did have some bright spots this season. But TV, the other thing that can't be overstated is the Oklahoma City Thunder have their draft pick this year. So, I mean, that's usually their calling card as, the Heat culture way, but that's gonna have to be some kind of second round pool because they do not have their first round pick. They would have been slotted at the 15th overall pick in this draft class, but it goes to Oklahoma City now. So you have to trust the guys in the room. There's a couple of things that you can do with some of the expiring contracts that they have, but like, let's be honest, bro. What are you getting for Kevin Love on the block? What are you getting for Terry Rozier on the block?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
maybe you can reflip Andrew Wiggins, but what are you getting for Andrew Wiggins on the block, right? I think that it's a team option on Duncan Robinson going into the summer, so you have to make a decision about him. And that might end up being one of their biggest decisions of the summer is what they want to do with him. Haywood Highsmith becomes an expiring contract at that point going into next season. Same thing could be said for Kevin Love, who also was in the same exact circumstance. Alec Burks is coming off of their books. I mean, this is one of those where I think outside of maybe trying to flip Terry Rozier, your biggest question mark is really around just whether or not you want to bring back Duncan Robinson on that team option of 19 mil. Because other than that, you kind of just got to watch these guys fall off the roster to create that cap flexibility that they are able to magically work within every single time we think they're dead in the water. The Heat are going to have to be one of the more patient teams in the league when it comes to a team that looks good enough to be a playoff team, but on paper doesn't tell the full story of how much of a rebuild they actually are.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And the thing was, like, I was like flipping back and forth to see like what they should do with this roster because like I more than anything I was because like especially from like the perspective from both of our teams, right? Like the Chicago Bulls and Toronto Raptors, we don't like being in the middle.
No.
We've said that on like multiple occasions, and I felt like if they stick with this roster, the Miami Heat are kind of settling for a mid opportunity. And I was going to say, you know what, kind of get ahead of it, rebuild early. But I kind of flipped my tone, like maybe before this episode, and I'm going to say stick to this roster. I think they should stick with the roster for next season, mostly because I feel like next season more than anything is a chance for them to see, okay, which one of you guys are a long-term piece? Which one of you guys do you think that are expendable for us going forward? Because we've seen a very much improved Tyler Hero, his first time as an All-Star this year. We've seen the best of Bam Adebayo, but also we've seen kind of the lows of Bam Adebayo a la this season. So I think now that Jimmy Butler's out the picture, and you kind of have the remains of the team that you've kind of kept around for the last couple of years, who's going to be here long-term? Who's going to be short here? Who's going to be here and be kind of trade pieces going forward? I think that's what next year is about to evaluate. So as much as I don't think they should be like okay with just middling out, in that playing spot like they have been the last couple of years, I feel like I'm okay with what they're doing if it means like after next season, they kind of have a better evaluation of the talent they have on their roster. So as much as I would say maybe it's time to rebuild now, I would say I'm okay with holding off a year, see what you got. Maybe Andrew Wiggins, he can play himself into like a better trade deal down the line. Maybe Tyler Hero is as good as he was this year. Maybe he's as good as advertised. Maybe Bam Adebayo bounces back in this new kind of role, especially without Jimmy. So give them some time, evaluate the roster. Next offseason, we can have a different conversation.
Yeah, the Miami Heat have always had a low year. They've always had that one gap year where they got to kind of like evaluate the situation following a significant move, whether it's them acquiring or losing somebody. They've always kind of had this lull year where you have to ask yourself, like, who are they? Like, what is this Miami team now? And they take a year to kind of figure things out, and then something happens with their cap flexibility, and they build another, gritty team that, makes noise. And even if they're not like a championship contender, they're always a team that kind of is afloat. Miami is a team that doesn't have the same merit as this organization, but the NFL comparison to them for me, like for Miami, especially in the last like 5 years, is like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like they're the team that like your coach is just too damn good for you to lose enough games to get a high draft pick, but you also desperately kind of need to be bad so you can finally reignite the team in a way that gets you kind of this reset that you need to get back on to the greater pastures of being a real contending type of squad. Miami kind of has been that in rotation over the last couple of years here and there, where like they're just always going to be too good. There's always going to be two good. And so I feel like they're going to run at a crossroads kind of similar to where the Orlando Magic did so far ago, back when they had, Evan Fournier and
Vucevic.
Vucevic and those guys, where it says, like, okay, it's good to have a group where, like, everybody's solid, but we're not good enough to really win a playoff series. But, like, that it has a shelf life, and we need to eventually address that shelf life. I think Miami's going to eventually have to be in a similar boat.
Yeah, 100%. They definitely changes to remain on the roster, but I don't think we should be quick to like make those changes just yet. I think again, evaluation of talent, see what you got, and see like which guys you want to have moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, next series we're gonna look at the Houston Rockets taking on the Golden State Warriors. They are down 3-1. Feels like fourth quarter offense has been a struggle for a lot of these young teams that we've mentioned in this episode so far. Kind of the same thing with the Houston Rockets. Jay, but here's my fill in the blank. The Rockets' missing piece is blank.
I mean, we just said it. The Rockets' missing piece is a closer. I understand that Clutch Player of the Year feels like one of those like gimmicky awards that we kind of just added in when we decided to like redo all the trophies. But there's some real merit to being considered one of the better players in the clutch. Knowing, especially on a Rockets team like this, that late game execution was always going to be a question mark for this team. We came into this series, and remember, we were so high on the ideology of playing through Alperen Sengun because we weren't sure how consistent Jalen Green could be as a scoring option on the perimeter throughout this series. And it has been exactly what we thought it would be.
Yeah, he has one good game.
Down.
Yeah, one good game.
He has had himself a good game, but he has not put together a strong series, and it's played out in a way where their perimeter offense has hurt them because they're not getting consistent conversions. They're not getting consistent buckets. They need a bucket getter who can close games. This is why we're going to spin the block back to something I said back when we were talking about the NBA trade deadline. This is why you wish that you were the Texas team that got De'Aaron Fox. Because, and I'm not just saying this because he won Clutch Player of the Year, a season prior, but I'm saying this because he's a guy who just when the game slows down, his gears can change in a way that helps you against a team like Golden State in the fourth quarter. He's a guy next to a Jalen Green, or even in spite of Jalen Green, next to an Amin Thompson, next to an Alperen Sengun, next to a Fred VanVleet, right? Next to a gangbusters lineup that has Tari Eason and Amin on it, right?
Yeah.
That gives you this change of pace energy in the fourth quarter that says, yo, when the game slows down, I grow under the bright lights. And so whether that's at the 3 spot, which I think is kind of tough because I'm not going to even hold you. I feel like the Rockets are more stuffed at the forward position than they are the guard spot. But whether it's at the guard spot or the 3 spot, they need an offensive engine that can help close games when things are tight, because that's been the difference. That honestly, late game execution might be the poster child phrase of the entire first round.
Yeah.
If you go series to series, we talked about the controversial tip-in dunk for the Nuggets, right? And closing out overtime for them. We just talked about how the Lakers can't seem to buy a bucket in the fourth quarter. The New York Knicks would be down in this series, or at least tied in this series, if it weren't for Jalen Brunson. The Celtics are late game execution a game away from this being a 2-2 series. Miami's probably the only spanking we've seen out of everybody we've talked about today. So, I mean, that goes to tell you that the importance of being able to finish games is so crucial. And when you're a young team like the Rockets, you can be gangbusters on defense, but if you can't get a bucket, you end up being like the Detroit Pistons, who lit off a 21-0 run and give away the game. The Rockets are in a similar situation.
Yeah, no, my phone bike has to do with like some guard play as well. The Rockets' missing piece is a dynamic guard on the offense, like a true star guard on the offensive end. And we've been pairing them with a lot of point guards. That was one of the things that we were hoping that De'Aaron Fox might get traded to when those rumors started to go up. This is where maybe like Trae Young has been like maybe you can like go into if the Hawks ever do get rid of him as well. I just think that the Rockets as much as like, we love Alperen Şengün, I like the way I'm watching him play throughout this series. I feel like he's going to end up being the perfect number 2 at some point. I think he's going to be a great number 2. I don't know what's going to happen with Jalen Green at this point. I think that's a different conversation to have in the future.
Yeah.
But you need someone to either feed in the ball or someone to kind of play off him very well. And I think that like that's what the Rockets are missing, just that number 1 like go-to option on the perimeter. Because they try going to Şengün late in these games, man. And as much as like how good as he is, I know he's getting good defended by Draymond Green. There's just not enough like creativity, like enough like dynamic energy like in that offense when you're going to Alperen Şengün like constantly in the fourth quarter. You need someone out there in the perimeter creating for themselves. I know Freddie tried doing that. We talk about Jalen Green being bad for most of the series. Fred VanVleet has been bad probably except for game 4. So they have players there at the guard position, but they don't have like a consistent offensive threat that they can go to at the later games. That's what they're missing. And I think the Rockets, when they keep it close, the Warriors have 2 of some of the best closers in the league, and whether it's Jimmy Butler or Stephen Curry. So they've been able to take advantage of that. We knew that the veteran leadership of the Warriors was going to prove to be trouble for the Rockets, especially late in games, and lo and behold, it's happening as we expected, Jay.
Yeah, we said it coming into the series, bro, that Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler on the other side. Obviously, we even had a question on last podcast, like if Jimmy misses time, like does it mean the Rockets are back in it? And I was like, maybe create some more competitive series. But like if that man Steph Curry is on a heater on the other side, like you just don't want to bet against him against when you're talking about a young Rockets team. Point proven.
He did that in game 3, 100%. But yeah, I mean, the Rockets, can they still extend the series? Maybe. But at the same time, like, in terms of like late game execution, like Jay and I, we haven't been like impressed to the point where maybe it feels like the Warriors should be able to take this series as the series goes back to Chase Center. Jay, next series we're gonna talk about the final series. We're gonna talk about actually the Grizzlies versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City Thunder took care of business, especially after John Morant went down with an injury. They came in from a 29-point lead, Jay. And that's how crazy that game 3 was. But the questions here is going to be for the Grizzlies, and there's already a lot of discussion about them potentially moving off some of their core pieces because clearly this hasn't worked the last couple of years. Fill in the blank, Jay. Blank out of 3 of the Grizzlies core will be on the roster next year. So out of how many of the players from their big 3?
This might be surprising, and I might end up, being a party pooper on this one. I believe that all 3 of their big 3 are going to be on the roster next year. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's kind of straightforward. And I hate to keep bringing the cap sheet stuff into it, but Desmond Bane is signed through for the next 4 seasons, and he's on an escalating contract where he's owed $36.7 million. Going into next year. John Morant is signed for the next 3 seasons. Also escalating deal, $39.4 million starting next year and gets all the way up to near $45 million before he becomes an unrestricted free agent in the year 2028, 2029. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., he's got 1 year left on his deal, but he's set up for a supermax kind of extension because not only is he probably going to make All NBA this year, but like he's probably going to win DPOY. So like he's set up for to be a player that like they probably want to lock up this summer. So once you kind of do that part, paired with the fact that now they have to kind of replace Taylor Jenkins, you're going to kind of want to give whoever the new head coach is a chance to get an understanding of what this team looks like. Obviously they have somebody in the building right now. The question will be whether or not they go with him long term. I think they will based off of all reports that we've seen. But you need a full season sample size to get an understanding of what this team can be with these 3 guys at the helm. And plus, I just think offensively, like your 2 spearheads being John Morant and Jaren Jackson, they lead the charge. You have Desmond Bane as a third-way guy to kind of help, put the cherry on top for things. Dude, your problem is not your big 3. The problem is that you got too many guys that are just stars in their role. That's great when you're a team that's just trying to consistently make the playoffs. When you're a team that's trying to actually win for winning a round, winning multiple rounds. Depth kind of goes out the window once you get past, once you get into April, May basketball, depth is not as big of a friend as it is during the regular season. And so having all of these great guys that just are stars in their roles, the Tyus Jones Award guys in my book,
Monty
right?
Aldama,
Right, Santi Aldama. I think that Scottie Pippen Jr. has been really, really solid within his
Great,
role
yeah.
for them. That's great. That's great. But you need yourself another offensive generator at the 3 spot, and I feel like we've been saying this for the better part of the last 2-3 years
Yeah.
now. Your biggest question is that, not whether or not your 3 guys are your best 3 guys. Your 3 guys you got are a damn good big 3. And against a lot of big 3s in the league, I would put them strongly up against most of them. Your issue isn't them. Your issue is that once you get past them, you have a bunch of guys who just are only stars in their role. And in a 7-game series against the Nikola Jokic's of the world, the Kawhi Leonards of the world, the Steph Currys of the world, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders of the world, you need another guy that you know is an auto bucket, and they don't have that guy.
Man, it's interesting because I feel like all 3 of them are going to be on the roster next year too. But I think for a different reason, because Jay, I don't think this big 3 is good enough. I think especially over the last couple of years, I feel like I think I mentioned this in another podcast. Like the outlook from the Grizzlies like 3 years ago compared to now is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I have like my concerns, especially now with Ja Morant. And I like one of the biggest Ja Morant advocates on this podcast, especially on my podcast over the last couple of years. Ja Morant's one of my favorite guys to watch. I like in my mind he was gonna be like a Derrick Rose-esque type of guy eventually. And I thought like after that most approved year it was only gonna go up from there. But the injuries have plagued him. He hasn't seemed like even like just the ability to stay on the court hasn't been there for their big 3. I mean, each of them have their own separate injury issues. And that's a lot of money tied to these big 3. Like, I don't trust like going forward long term that this big 3 will take you to where the Grizzlies intend to go, which is try to go for an NBA championship, try to go for a finals appearance. I think that you're right. Get a new coach in there. Maybe like again, someone from their bench. It seems like that's what they're going to end up going with. See what you have in this roster next year, and then make those tough decisions like the year after. Kind of how I said about the Miami Heat. Talent evaluation. Is Ja Morant still that same guy that we like thought he was going to be 3 years ago? Is Jaren Jackson going to be continuing to grow on the offensive end, still be that DPOY level candidate? Is Desmond Bane a good enough, reliable third option? Those stuff need to be put under a microscope next year. Because currently, I'm not fully bought into this big 3 or this roster in general. But I still think they need a year to kind of figure things out. I don't think they need to jump the gun just yet. I feel like that this big 3 is not good enough, and there's like a lot of room that there's a lot of moves that can be made. Like unlike some of these other teams, they actually have assets to kind of move around some stuff if they really want to optimize this roster. But yeah, I'm just not a big believer of this big 3, and that's coming from someone who was like super into the Grizzlies a couple of years ago. I think that things definitely need to be changed. But I still think, again, let the coach come in, let him do like a full time evaluation before knowing what exactly he's to do. I think they do all end up being on this team next year.
Yeah, so we're both basically on opposite ends of the spectrum about the team, specifically the big 3, but we come to the same conclusion. I think that goes to show you how confusing this Grizzlies team is. But I think it also goes back to something you said last pod, which is the outlook on the young core of this team is so skewed now because the trajectory of each of their players is at such a weird pace, right? It felt like at one point they were all kind of ascending at the same time. Yeah. And it feels like
Jaren Jackson's up here, Ja Morant's down here because of the injuries. Like there's like different paths. Yeah.
Everything is kind of off kilter in a way where now we don't necessarily know what timeline is the true timeline for them. And that's not a question we had even a year ago, I would say. Yeah. Right? And so that changes so much. But I think we also just have to come to the conclusion that they are a youthful team with 3 guys who play basketball at a really high level in 3 different yet cohesive ways. And that's one of those things that, like, you'd hate to be the guy that doesn't give Jaren Jackson Jr. an extension this year. Because if he makes unrestricted free agency the following summer, he might be out of there.
He's one of those guys where you just have to sign, and if you have to trade him later, but you need to sign him to a deal.
Right. Yeah. You would hate to be one of those guys that moves off from Desmond Bane, and then you're struggling to find who that secondary perimeter shot creator next to Ja Morant is. You'd hate to be the guy that moves off from Ja Morant without it being tied to his injury history, a la Derrick Rose, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
and it be because of other things beyond, right? And then he goes somewhere else and completely kill, right? And it all be just based off of faith in him from the organization. You'd hate to be the team, right? And that's the situation they're in with all three guys at the same damn time.
That's great. Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, we're both on board with them going for it another year just to kind of see how it goes. It's just like just the spectrum of how we see like this Grizzlies team is kind of like, goes to show like how much like I wouldn't say turmoil, but like how much change has gone in, and a lot of that has to do with injuries. And now with the coaching situation, now there's going to be like a big kind of question mark on this team in general going into next year. This is like where you kind of see like, okay, which ones do we want to again keep long term? Which ones are going to be a part of the future? See, we go talent evaluation mode next year, and then we go forward from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are all the fill in the blanks for all of the series. Let us know down below what you guys think. I mean, the only other thing I wanted to say about that series is like, yeah, the Thunder, they're really damn good. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finally found his flow in that fourth game, by the way. So hopefully that continues on to the rest of the playoffs. But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think. Fill in the blanks with all of your answers and put them down in the comment section down below. Jay, 2 more fill in the blanks though, not series related, but I want to do these two to end off the episode. Fill in the blank, Jay, for this one. Blank is the playoff MVP so far.
So far, it probably is Anthony Edwards. Nah, Anthony Edwards is really the OG Slayer for real, and has been playing at a high level. Over 40 minutes, either 40 plus minutes per game. In the last 3 games against the Lakers, has just been completely on a tear. Scored 43 points in 44 minutes in Game 4. To get that game notched down, paired with 9 rebounds and 6 assists. Dude's hitting crazy from the 3-point line. Obviously, he had a tough game too, but other than that, he's been shooting the lights out from 3. And I mean, again, another series where you walk in and you underestimate the Minnesota Timberwolves, and here comes the OG Slayer walking through with his sword in hand, ready to take out yet another legend and ready to build up another Cancun boat for somebody that we thought was going to maybe make a deep playoff run. That's crazy.
100%. And he's up there. For me, it was between 2 guys. It was between him, and I'm going to go with this guy as my playoff MVP so far. Jalen Brunson. I'm going to go Jalen Brunson as my playoff MVP. He's, mind you, this guy's playing off a hurt ankle, and this guy is just constantly just killing fourth quarters. Like, he is absolutely killing it. He's averaging like 13 points alone per game in the fourth quarter. And so far in the playoffs, he's averaging 33 points per game, 46% for the field, 83% for the free throw line, and he's just that guy to like make the decision like late in games. And he's been able to pull these out, whether it's game 1 leading the charge alongside Cameron Payne for the 21-0 run, or just hitting clutch after clutch shot, getting to the free throw, like hitting those free throws. Jalen Brunson has been doing it all, and I told you last year that he was one of my favorite player performers. That's why he kind of like elevated to like my top 10 rankings of players going into this season. Mm-hmm. And he's showing me once again in the playoffs that Jalen Brunson has that extra level that he's able to go to. And when you want to go into a battle with him in the clutch, you're probably going to lose because the clutch player of the year just knows how to get it done.
Yeah, facts. Jalen Brunson has been special this postseason so far, and he's kind of just building off the regular season in terms of being a player that you can just trust with the ball in his hands in the closing moments of the game. Tom Thibodeau is really playing with his fire right now because he's in a situation where he's getting the best out of every single player on his team. And the Knicks, we know this, they're a team that like you cannot sleep on because Tom Thibodeau's ideology around the way his roster construction is in terms of like his rotation construction is always going to be one that's in question. But there's one thing you're never going to question about a Tom Thibodeau team, and this is coming from a Bulls fan. They played too damn hard for you to be worried about whether or not they're going to be able to finish game. That's one thing you never going to sweat is whether or not when the fourth quarter comes, they're going to be underprepared. This is a team that knows how to finish games hard, play well, and even if they lose, they damn sure didn't lose off of the merit of not giving the effort. This is a team that when the fourth quarter hits, there's a lot of teams that slow down. This team speeds up.
Yeah, no, this team just takes it to the next level in the fourth quarter. You see that with Jalen Brunson throughout this entire series, and Cat got a big bunch of it in the last game as well. So Jalen Brunson, my playoffs MVP, Anthony Edwards for Jay. On the flip side, though, Jay, fill in the blank. The most disappointing player in the playoffs has been blank.
The most disappointing player in the playoffs for me has been from Jalen to Jalen. We're going to go to Jalen Green, man. I had high expectations for him coming into this postseason as a guy that I said would be able to use this stage to kind of anoint himself. We've seen this time and time again with these young guards having the chance to put themselves at the forefront on the center stage and say, yo, I am here, right? We saw De'Aaron Fox against the Golden State Warriors do it. We saw John Morant do it in multiple playoff series in the earlier portion of his career. We've seen it in a lot of different instances. I would even say this year we're seeing it even with the way the series has played out. I would say in a similar draft class, Cade Cunningham has stepped up in a real way for the Detroit Pistons so far this postseason. But Jalen Green, man, has had he's had 3 single-digit games and 1 big breakout game 3. Other than that, he's had
Game 2. Game 2 was
game 2. Excuse me, game 2.
Yeah.
So he's in a situation right now where, like, he said going into game 1, he felt like the lights were a little too bright, and I ain't gonna hold you. Outside of game 2, looks like them lights got flicked back on because he kind of has not been the guy I was hoping he was going to be in this series. I think a lot of people were hoping this would be his standout moment to be able to step on center stage and really show that he's one of these guards we need to be worried about in a good way moving forward as one of the better young prospects at the guard position, especially in the Western Conference. It's so stacked at that spot. And here's yet another series where he gives us the proof that this is why he can't be your number 1 option. And this is another reason why we go down these conversations of saying, like, yo, how much longer can he survive on a Houston Rockets team that has the draft capital to go after a guy that can easily fill the role that he serves right now? Yeah.
No, 1,000,000%. Jay, he went from having 38 points in that game 2 to being benched at the end of game 4.
He scored 38 in game 2 and hasn't scored a combined of 38 in the 3 other games he's played.
Not even close. It's been really bad for Jalen Green. He was definitely one of my candidates here. I don't know. It just felt like there was like no expectation for me to begin with, for me to kind of like be disappointed with Jalen Green.
Okay.
Or it's kind of like whatever he could give you is a bit of a surprise, but I've always had a question about him. If I was just hoping that he would prove me wrong more than anything. I think I was just hoping that he would prove me wrong.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I hate to say this, but he's just kind of like going about like how we were like kind of discussing about him over the past 2 years. And I know this is his first playoff series. Maybe like learning from this experience can really help him when they do get back into this position. But it's not a great start. It's not a great start 100%. And he was definitely one of my candidates for this. Jay, the person I'm going to go with here kind of stems from the point that I had high expectations when he was acquired by this team in the offseason. He left a very good organization and to really try and help out this team's lack of 3-point shooting. Jay, my most disappointing player in the playoffs, KCP. KCP was that player when going into the season for me that he left a good situation on the Nuggets. He was fully optimized. He had a perfect role there, and he could just continue to hit threes off the back of Nikola Jokic. Here, he doesn't have that privilege. I was hoping that maybe going to playoffs after a very much struggling regular season, that we would see like him kind of be the vet in the room, making sure like letting these guys know like what it really takes to play your role in the playoffs and like how to be able to kind of pull out these games. Which to a certain extent, like Paolo and Franz have done it. The other guys haven't really stepped up. But Jay, in this, he already had a bad regular season, scoring 8 points per game on 34% 3-point shooting. Jay, in the playoffs, he's playing 34 minutes per game, by the way. 4 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds, 23% from the field, 25% from 3. Abysmal.
Yeah.
You would hope that like, with the very few shooting that the Magic have, you would have this guy playing well. Jay, I was celebrating when he hit 2 threes in game 3. I was celebrating that. And like at this point, they signed to a long-term deal. I don't know what's going to come of it. Maybe like having a point guard on the team is going to help him going into next season. But I was hoping for him to at least like showcase like why the Magic were able to like want to get him for like a decent playoff run, and he's played even worse than what I thought he was going to like coming out from the regular season. It's been really bad with KCP.
Hey man, it's something about leaving Denver that puts you in a really interesting position. You go down the list, right? Reggie Jackson, KCP, Bruce Brown, Will Barton, Jeff Green. You go down the list,
yeah,
and it's like that system is very favorable. The Jokic effect is a very real thing.
and it's very slept on because it's one of those things that people don't really pay attention to in the moment. But that man gets people paid. He gets people paid for
He
real.
does.
And KCP was yet the next victim of, yes, he got the bag, but at what cost, right? In terms of, again, coming from a championship caliber team. So it's just, it's one of those
things where I thought he was going to be a big time acquisition for them as well. I also could tell you going into the season that I thought as long as they still were without a big time perimeter shot creator, KCP was only going to be but so good of an addition. So, I mean, this is one of those where his presence definitely has not been felt this year. Worst 3-point shooting team of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that just another feather in the cap of somebody like Nikola Jokic, who clearly gets guys paid, because when they leave the Denver Nuggets, they are just not the same kind of player.
No, man, 100%. It sucks because I was a huge KCP fan, and he made me a huge fan when, like, part of that Nuggets championship team. He played such a vital role for them in the last couple of years there, and now he's just kind of like dwindling on a Magic team where he can't even get a freaking shot up, bro. Like it's been horrible. So yeah, KCP has been my most disappointing player in the playoffs. For those two problems, let us know what you guys think down below. The playoff MVP and the most disappointing player of the playoffs so far. Jay, we have reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Well, by the time that we next record, I would assume we're gonna be in the midst of the second round by that point. Or at least nearing it, depending on how some of these series start to kick off. So that should be really interesting to see what happens. I'm really excited to see who moves on, mainly because there are a few series that I feel like are pretty much wrapped up, but the ones that aren't, the winner of it is really going to determine who I believe is going to come out of the West. I think the second round is going to be much bigger of a determining factor on who I think is the best team in the Western Conference, specifically. And, man, we've had good hoops, man. So just like stick with us through the postseason coverage, man. We're obviously going to be really locked in terms of the social medias. We'll be posting a lot more on the short form side of social media in between these series. But nonetheless, I think that we are at a much better start to this postseason than last year. That's for sure. And that's a great precedent. I just hope the second round can kind of keep the same end.
No, I hope so too. I mean, the first round last year was great. This one I feel like has been better. I just hope that the injuries don't get us like they did last year. That's what I really took control of, like, the narrative last year. Yeah. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we get to see these stars play deep into the playoffs and get to see, like, the full capabilities of these teams. But yeah, Jay, it's been another great episode. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast through all of our links below. Jay and I will be back next week for another new episode. Also check out our individual socials down below. But yeah, hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.